the quality of the content, Google is very much they're a hybrid text search engine, but they're very focused on the text on the page. Programmatically, Google are grading us on our topicality, and we introduced a concept that's called topical dominance. Maybe I should flip my hat to the black hat side. The crazy thing is, even if you don't physically change the content in any way, but you just update that one timestamp, rankings go up. We have a golden window of opportunity where we can make any changes we want to the page, and Google will see them. But if we take longer than that, they won't. We actually think of SEO in these concrete processes. Deleting and purging bad content is a process. Creating new content is a separate process, right? And we don't try to link them together. The more related those pages are to each other, topically, the better. Google has a huge moat around the search business, and I think Google will stay king, but people are doing more searches on other platforms, and so it's important for us to be there. And everyone knows that we need more of it. Everyone wants to build more of it. So people are creating content and publishing more, but they don't actually know how much they have versus their competitors. And then they also don't know, where is the competitor getting their topical authority from? Where are they getting it that we don't have it?
In charge of SEO at your company? Check out Linkhouse. Tens of thousands of websites from more than 20 countries in one place, integrated with the most powerful SEO tools. Plus, expert support at no extra cost. Sign up for free at app.linkhouse.co and start saving your time today.
Hello everybody, welcome back to our I Hate SEO podcast. Today I'm meeting in Chiang Mai SEO with Manick Bhan. Hello Manick.
Hi, how are you?
The founder of SearchAtlas. I'm doing well, and yourself?
Amazing.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm the founder, CEO, CTO of SearchAtlas Group. We've been around for the last 7 years, and we're on a mission to automate SEO using AI and holistic SEO.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So are you an SEO hater or lover?
It depends on the day. It depends on the day. I mean, I think any SEO who's been in the game long enough that doesn't admit that they hate it a little bit sometimes would be lying.
Okay.
But I think there's more to love than hate, because without it, all we have are the ads. We have search engine marketing, paid Google ads, paid Facebook ads. And I think the allure of organic rankings is that if you deserve to rank, you can rank and you don't have to pay for it.
Yes. So that's what you love about
That's
SEO.
what I love about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And how is Chiang Mai SEO for you? Is this your first time?
My first time here, yeah.
How do you find the conference?
It's awesome. It's great. I haven't met a lot of the SEOs that are more in Asia and in Europe. I don't see them as often, so it's always great to meet them and spend time with them, and get introduced to guys like Korai, like Irfan Azimi, like Julian Goldie, Matt Diggity, these guys. So it's been great.
Because you're from the States.
Exactly. Yeah. Live in the States.
Awesome. You are the champion of dynamic SEO, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you explain the term for people who are new to it, and maybe describe it and give some examples?
Yeah, sure. So dynamic SEO, it really is this concept, this idea that SEO is never, ever really finished. And as we optimize and we work on websites, as we make changes to their content, to their technical structure, to the backlink profile, to things that cause the crawl behavior to change, we see rankings change. And in response to the rankings change, whether they're new keywords being added that the page is ranking for, rankings improving, going up and going down, we really should be optimizing our content again. Too many people think of SEO as this kind of static race where we do some research, we then build content, it goes on the site, and then we just pretty much forget about it. We see, does it rank? How does it perform? And then we move on to the next keyword and we keep going and going, right? Yeah. It's actually one of the things I don't like about SEO is that it's never really over. It's also one of the things I love about it, because you can always keep growing and gaining. But dynamic SEO is really this concept that we can, using software programmatically, continue to optimize the website and content in response to the algorithms and how they're changing our rankings.
So how would you start with dynamic SEO? What would you advise a new person?
Okay, so dynamic SEO, it really, to even begin to leverage this concept of dynamic SEO, it requires a couple things. Number one, software, right? There's no way to do this manually, really. If you do it manually, you're just not going to be able to move fast enough.
What software would you recommend for that?
Well, I'm obviously partial to Auto and SearchAtlas, of course. We're really the only ones that created technology that's like this. But the idea is that we can basically use technology that is an interface that allows us to manipulate the website in a very programmatic way, very quickly, so that we install this technology onto the website, and now we can pretty much change anything we want about the HTML content on the website. We can change the images, the title tags, we can insert new tags, we can add new content, we can modify text, we can change link behavior. There's really no limit to what we can do with this type of technology. And it allows us to express our creativity around SEO in a more automated, programmatic, and also instantaneous fashion. So Auto stands for one-click, trusted, transparent optimization of SEO.
Okay. And what are the most important factors of on-page optimization?
So when it comes to on-page optimization, we really look at an algorithm that Google has, PQ, the page quality algorithm. And page quality, when we think about information retrieval systems or search engines, there's a number of different factors that they look at that drive rankings. In the most simplest way to explain it possible, rankings are based on your page quality and your ranking signals. Page quality is going to be everything about the page itself, the on-page factors. So over time, we've seen some of those factors shift, but the quality of the content, Google is very much they're a hybrid text search engine, but they're very focused on the text on the page. That's very important. So the quality of your writing, the quality of your factuality, your insight, your information, being able to provide information above and beyond what your competitors and SERPs have provided, and also the alignment and the contextual flow of the content. So all of those are what we really talk about as semantics, the semantic SEO aspect of content. And we actually recently have released a semantic SEO grader that we call Scholar, which is basically a semantic rule-based evaluation that allows us to benchmark content in a fully kind of agnostic way that's like very, let's say, quantitative, to say, is this content a 5 or is it a 50 or is it 100 along those semantic SEO principles? And so essentially, if you can get a perfect score in that grader, we've pretty much tried to reverse engineer Google's page quality algorithm. And that will give you a really good score in the PQ algorithm. And we've seen that correlates more strongly than any factor we've come across in the SEO industry for rankings. So PQ is like super, super important.
And how do you establish authority and expertise?
Yeah, so there are multiple lenses through which Google and search engines can think about authority. The two are going to be one relating to the links, the citations, the backlinks, right? So that's all backlink-based authority. And then there's authority that's related to content, the words that we're using, the keywords that we're ranking for. And these are the two most important ones. They use both together. There's actually a patent where they show a bunch of publications and they regress them and they show that they can actually use what's called knowledge-based trust. Basically, you showing and proving to the search engine that you're knowledgeable just based on your content, that you deserve to rank and your authority. Those are the two lenses.
And what about topicality? And I heard your speech yesterday. It was really good. I was interested about topicality and site radius. Could you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah. So topicality, when Google is evaluating who is a credible source, let's say the most knowledgeable source in an industry, obviously no one can be the master of the universe and know everything about all things and be the best at all things. They kind of expect websites to center around what's called a central search intent. Let's call it a primary keyword, like that thing that the site is really all about. And they want it to be narrow. They don't want you to be getting into all kinds of different topics. Like if you're a plumber, you're a plumber. You're not also HVAC and roofing and all this stuff. They just want you to be really one topic. And so, well, obviously, one of the things I discussed in the presentation is how programmatically Google are grading us on our topicality. And we introduced a concept that's called topical dominance. And the idea behind topical dominance is that based on the keywords that we're ranking for and their topicality, Google are really scoring how authoritative we are in a topic. And that is like one of the ways that they're figuring out how authoritative that site is. And you'll actually see that sites that rank for a lot of keywords very well in a given topical area will be able to outrank other sites in the same space, even if they have very low authority on a backlink perspective. So this is where we see the content-based authority, let's call it topical dominance, actually be more powerful than backlink-based authority.
Okay. And more questions on from the technical side. So many sites struggle with scaling with dynamic content while maintaining SEO value. What are like the most critical technical considerations when you implement dynamic SEO? I'm like thinking a little bit about cannibalization here.
Yeah. So I would say there's a few things. Dynamic SEO works best when you have a lot of content, right? The more content that's on the site already, the easier it is for us to optimize what's there. What I'd like to talk about is this idea of like ranking potential, right? If you have one page on a website, that's only one page can rank for anything on Google if you only have one page, right? So the total amount of traffic you can get is very small.
Yes.
If you have hundreds or thousands of pages and they're good pages, you've got a lot more potential, right, where you can rank. So we like to see sites that are larger. And so a big part of Auto and our system is that we want to help you create and publish more landing pages, maybe service pages, product pages, blog posts, really all kinds of content so that we can boost that ranking potential. And when we add more pages to the website, we can do cool things with interlinking. We can link those pages together in interesting ways. I mean, how many times, this is a problem that I see teams come across as they're scaling their content, is when they write the first article on the blog, right? They couldn't imagine the 1,000th article on the blog.
Yes.
And maybe they should be linking to one another.
Yes.
Right? But a writer's going to have a very difficult time remembering. And even if you're using software, I mean, SearchAtlas, we have tools that help you with this and show you suggested internal links. But going back to that original article you wrote and putting the links into that article is a very time-consuming process.
Yes.
So Auto actually can automate that. It understands that these are related articles based on what are called document vectors. They're very close to each other, and that tells us that this content is related, and we can link them to one another. So we can pretty much help you get more juice out of the content that's already on the website by optimizing it for the keywords that it's ranking for, improving its salience for those keywords, and a lot of other on-page things that we're doing within the tool.
Okay. Great. And could you explain how JavaScript rendering affects dynamic content optimization? Like what solutions have you found to be most effective?
Yeah, so Google they do a really good job of JavaScript rendering pages on the internet. And pretty much almost every page has some element that changes based on JavaScript. Every like accordion module or carousel module of images, a lot of those are using some kind of JavaScript, and they don't render properly if you break JavaScript on the page. So Google understands this. Every page on the internet is actually rendered with JavaScript. And so before they finally fully render a page, they'll let the JavaScript render itself for about 3 seconds, 4 seconds, something like that.
Okay.
And within that window of time, we have a golden window of opportunity where we can make any changes we want to the page, and Google will see them. But if we take longer than that, they won't.
Yeah.
So it has to be lightning fast. We have to already know all the things we want to change on the page so that we can serve that content up, that strategy up instantaneously, and get it into the page before Google have finished rendering, if that makes sense.
Yes. What's the best way to do that?
To pre-compute what we call page mods. So we pre-calculate for every page on the website how we would optimize it. So that way our endpoint basically has the answer and it responds in under 100 milliseconds. So very, very fast. And the JavaScript pixel receives that data and then modifies the page in a very particular way to implement all of our auto AI's brain of like what we should change on the page, implement that into the page very quickly, and then Google sees that.
Okay. Oh, very good.
And that's one implementation. So
Yeah.
JavaScript implementation allows it to be a universal solution, right? If the website's built in HTML, it's going to work, right? It's JavaScript. The internet
Yes.
runs on HTML. But we also have plugins. So like for
Oh, okay.
WordPress or for Shopify, we do what we call server-side rendering. So all of those changes happen before, not actually in JavaScript, but on the server before the page is actually rendered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And how has your approach to XML sitemaps evolved for sites that have lots of pages, like millions of dynamic pages, especially when we take into account the frequency and prioritization?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's always interesting about those sites that have huge sitemaps is that there's an SEO somewhere that's just beating their head against the wall. Because managing big sites is always hard. More product pages, like let's say e-commerce maybe.
Yes.
It's an e-commerce store, right?
That's typical for e-commerces, yeah.
Yeah. They'll have thousands sometimes or tens or hundreds of thousands of pages. Some of those products are no longer available for purchase, but there's a dead page. That page maybe is about a product that no one's searching for anymore, so it has no search volume.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of this kind of debris, right, on the website. The problem with that is Google still has to index those pages, and your crawl budget is kind of being wasted on those pages, and they're low quality, right? So sites like that have a lot of different types of problems that are pretty much consistent, right, from site to site to site. And so what Auto allows us to do on those sites is to identify the pages that we need to prune, to get rid of them so we can tighten up the site, narrow the site radius, tighten up the all of the web pages so that the content that's on the site is the best possible content. A lot of times what people don't realize is, number one, removing pages can actually increase rankings.
Yes.
Seems counterintuitive, right? But that's one of my favorite strategies. When we see sites that have been built up a lot over time, the first thing we do is we cut. We cut. The second thing we do is we look at how recently the content was updated. Sitemaps have these tags on each page that tell us when that page was last modified, right? So when did we last update this content? A lot of times that content is old, a couple years old. We actually have done a correlation study where we've run a correlation of rankings against a whole bunch of factors. One of those factors is content freshness, right? And just that one timestamp alone is a ranking signal. Okay.
Yes.
So the crazy thing is, even if you don't physically change the content in any way, but you just update that one timestamp, rankings go up.
Really? Just updating the timestamp is enough?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe I should flip my hat to the black hat side.
Yes. This is the first time I hear that, because, everybody says that you should update your content frequently, like add some new information, expand. But this is new.
A lot of people say that, right?
Yeah.
But what they didn't realize is that when they updated their content, they also updated that timestamp, right? So me as like a hardcore SEO experimenter, researcher, I want to know, is it the content change or is it the timestamp update?
Yeah.
So what you can do, if you wanted to do it the right way, I'd say, update the timestamp first and see what happens to rankings.
Yes.
And then update the content again, right? On top of that, and see which one moves the needle.
Yeah.
You should be doing both, but obviously updating content manually, very time consuming. It's process.
Yes.
This is one of the things that in dynamic SEO we're trying to solve, is this idea that we can take content that's old, break it down to its building blocks, enhance it with new information, build it up, create new images, new videos even, new structured content, new schema markup, enhance that content, and then use AI to rebuild that content, right? To say the most amount of information in the fewest amount of words and rebuild the page and put it back up. That process is what we call dynamic content optimization.
Okay.
And that I think it's part of the future of SEO. It's where we're going. And it's a technology that the industry needs. That's one of the things we're building.
Awesome. I love your hat. I love that change. I love that change.
It was subtle. Subtle change.
This is great. Yeah. And so how do you decide when to delete content?
Always. I love deleting content because it's so easy. And Google tells you how they feel about your content, right? It's pretty clear. When you see that the content is not getting impressions, not getting any search volume on the site, it's not helping you. So there's often very little reason to keep that type of content on the domain, especially if it's been there for a while and they've had a chance to index it.
Okay, but how do you decide whether to maybe rewrite it versus deleting, actual deleting?
So people have different approaches to this. So when we actually think of SEO in these concrete processes, deleting and purging bad content is a process.
Okay.
Creating new content is a separate process, right? And we don't try to link them together.
Okay.
Right? The new content creation, especially because one of the things we've noticed with Google is when we're publishing new pages on the website, new blog content, new landers, the more related those pages are to each other topically, the better. And so we're usually creating new content that's within a topical map that's all very closely topically related. And we're just building that out. So we wouldn't want to go back and rebuild an old page that's not performing because topically it might be irrelevant to that.
Okay.
Right? If that topic is in a topical map that we are focusing on with our new content phase, we'll come back to it. But for now, it's not helping us, so we kill it.
Okay, I see. So what are the common mistakes SEOs make when they try to implement dynamic content generation?
It's a good one. I think there's a few gotchas. The first thing is dynamic content and dynamic SEO requires first-party data. We need access to Search Console. We need access, if you have a GBP and you're optimizing for Google Maps, we need the GBP data. We need the first-party data because that first-party data shows us what's happening in real time, essentially, with all of the keywords on the site, all the pages on the site. So we're optimizing to that. Based on how Google responds to our change, we can either keep the change or we can roll the change back. Usually we keep it because it's improving it, right? We don't make changes to sites. Let's say our holistic framework is based on research of, we've done thousands of case studies on client sites. We've built over 34 white papers, lots of extensive A/B testing. So the only reason that we're making a change is because it's based on some data that we have, that this actually improves rankings. So we don't usually roll it back. But that first-party data is essential for us to make sure that what we're doing is working. And so some people, when they implement auto and this strategy, they don't connect the first-party data to the system, which makes it harder for us because then we have to go based on our keyword database and the rankings that we're tracking there, which are usually, when you look at any SEO tool vendor, the total amount of keywords in their database for a website is usually maybe 20 to 30% of all the keywords the site's actually ranking for. So think about how big that data gap is.
That's huge.
Massive. So you want to use the full data set. You got to really give it all the data. And if you put that data into the model will make better choices.
So what's your framework for testing your SEO hypothesis?
It's a good one. The way that we approach it, there's really two styles of experimentation. The first one is we take our test sites, and we have at this point maybe 500 to 1,000 test sites. That's
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
These are domains we've acquired over the last 7 years. Many of them began as PBNs. Some of them were real publishers that we just bought and acquired, or people offered for sale for us and we bought them. Some of them are our brands. We basically just use these test sites. They're guinea pigs. Whatever happens to them, it's very low stakes for us. So not to say that animal testing is okay. I don't condone animal testing, but so pardon the metaphor to guinea pigs. But yeah, essentially these are just test sites. And so with these test sites, we like to do dramatic things to them, like remove all the content from the site, put it back on,
Wow.
rip out the template, put the template back in, add in thousands of links across the website to study what that does. Like we will make radical changes, and we'll really test Google to the limits to see what happens. For more like the benign experiments, we will take, let's say we'll take a group of sites, maybe 5-10 sites. That's our control group. And then we'll take another group of 5 or 10 sites, and that's our variable group. And we implement a change, the same change in a very prescribed way across each of those test sites. Maybe it's across 1 page or 10 pages or something. And then we make sure Google sees those changes. That's very important. So we get those pages indexed by Google so that we know that on this specific date, Google saw the change, right? The search engine saw the change. And then we watch and we wait. And we use the first party data through Search Console or Google Business Profile, or if it's a local SEO test, it'll be the heat maps that we're using within SearchAtlas to track rankings for the business. And then we see what happens. I wish I could say every experiment lands, right? But not every experiment works out.
Sure.
But we've had more experiments land than fail. And the cool thing about it is that some of those experiments really opened our eyes and allowed us to disillusion ourselves about some, let's say like SEO sheep that have a certain way of looking at how Google should work or how you should do things.
Yes.
Realize that that's not reality. That's not exactly how the search engine works.
A lot of people rely on opinions.
Yes.
So what was like the most memorable one for you?
This one's easy. So everyone told us that when we were optimizing landing pages or blog content, and we want to optimize the entities on the page, right? The named entities, the related things, concepts, phrases in the content, that needs to be actually visible on the page, right? So that humans and the search engines would see it. But we did an experiment where we just took that content and we put it hidden into the page to see what would happen. Turns out, even if it's hidden and it's on the page, as long as it's there, whether it's visible or not, the search engine picks it up and it improves rankings.
Oh, wow.
Very surprising,
interesting.
right?
Yeah, very surprising.
So now take that idea and now optimize the entire site this way.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
That is huge.
Massive, right?
Yeah.
So that's an auto. Auto does that.
Awesome. Wow. And how do you separate correlation from causation in SEO data?
Yeah. So sometimes there is this chicken or the egg problem where we look at what's ranking on Google and we try to explain why is it ranking where it's ranking. It's kind of an alphabet soup. We load in a bunch of correlation factors and we don't know exactly which ones are correlated or not correlated or if it's causation. But whenever we see that pattern emerge in the correlation, we understand that that's significant in some way. We have to increase it. Maybe by increasing something else, we'll also increase that other factor. There's sometimes co-correlated factors that work together. But ultimately, what we try to do is just mirror the pattern of what is correlated to ranking well on Google and get there in whichever way that we can and see how that impacts rankings.
Okay. I would like to move on to LLMs now because that's a big topic nowadays. So with the rise of LLMs, how will the search look like in the couple of years, or how will the search look like outside of Google? What's your take on that?
So, I think exactly how we search in the future is yet to be determined. But one of the things that we can see is that Google has a huge moat around the search business. And I think Google will stay king. I don't really see Google being dethroned from their prominence. But we are seeing that the search landscape, the search market's actually getting bigger. People are doing more searches on other platforms. And so it's important for us to be there. It's important for us to understand how are those LLMs deciding what information, what brands get prominence within the LLM. And that is, as of today, for the industry, kind of an Achilles heel. We don't really have good visibility into that. And so realizing this, one of the questions that we asked is, how can we get smarter about that knowledge discovery? Like, what is the LLM going to answer for all these range of topics? So in information architecture, one of the most powerful principles is that the most powerful kind of coupling is a question and an answer. A question is a very conservative way of getting to factual information. So we see questions and answers as really powerful. And using those questions at scale across every industry, right? We have a huge database of keywords, of 5 billion plus keywords. We look at that database and we find the questions in that database. The who, what, where, when, how, is, all these different variations. And then we surface them. There's over 150 million of them. And then we ask each large language model all those questions.
Okay.
And it gives us answers. And now we can understand, based on its training data, what does it think is the correct answer? What brands will it reference? Obviously, some questions are quite dull, like, why is the sky blue? Not the most interesting, but other questions like, what is the best SEO software tool?
Yes.
SearchAtlas, we want it to say that.
Yes.
So that was a question that we had, is like, well, how is it deciding what the best tool is?
Exactly.
Right? And so to answer that question, we have to go to the source documents that it's been trained on, that it's used to figure out the answer to that question.
Okay.
And so when we built Quest, and that's one of the things I showed yesterday in the talk, Quest is essentially a product that allows us to figure out what the source documents are, and then reach out to those webmasters, authors, writers, journalists that created that content, so that we can get included in that source document, so that the next time the LLM reindexes that content and sees the refresh with our link in it, or our brand being mentioned, in this context, actually, you don't need the link.
Okay.
What you need here is you just need the content about yourself there in that document.
Yes.
It's not about the link here. It's just about the content being there. And that would retrain the LLM and give it your brand as the answer. So that's the idea behind it.
So this is how you get indexed in an LLM.
This is one way.
One way.
This is one way.
Are there any other ones?
There are. So another way is we know that the first question is, where do the LLMs get their data?
Yes.
Right. And one of the data sources is they crawl the internet. We know this.
Yes.
They get data from Common Crawl. So there's a bot called CCBot. You may see it in your log files. That bot is basically indexing the internet and providing a corpus for free for researchers, teams to use. We want to be in that corpus, because that corpus goes into the large language models potentially.
Yes.
So getting visible for Common Crawl is important. There are some sites that Common Crawl crawls more often than other sites. So figuring out which sites are in Common Crawl helps us figure out, if we were going to do some link building, if we were going to do some content syndication and get some content on those sites, what sites should we focus on? So that's one approach, is instead of going to the source documents they're already using, create new source documents on the websites that we know they're going to index. Okay. So that's one approach. And that's like, there are a few ways to do this. You can target news sites, right? You can do press releases on certain news platforms. For certain LLMs, like for Grok, the one on Twitter, we know that they're using Twitter data.
Okay.
Right. And for Gemini, we know Gemini is using Reddit data.
Yes.
Right. So you can also think about it that way, which is, if we know that they're relying on certain social platform data, how do we get our data into that platform and improve its visibility on that platform? Because we know that that will go into the model as well. So there's multiple ways.
Yeah. Or ChatGPT with Bing, the recent one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we track the visibility in LLMs?
So the way that we approach it is that, as we go back to those questions, right? What are the questions for which people are looking for answers? And obviously we can't predict every question someone might ask. There's no way that we can do that. But we can try to get a represented enough collection of common questions that people are typing into search engines or even LLMs, and preemptively ask the LLMs those questions. And then look at how visible our brand is for that range of queries. So let's like use an example. So like shoes, like running shoes, Adidas men's shoes. Adidas wants to know how visible are they in the large language models for search queries about men's running shoes.
Yes.
So there is a range of questions that people can ask about running shoes. What's the best running shoe for rainy days? What's the best running shoe for track and field? What's the best running shoe for, that's also like a, comfortable shoe to walk at, and like travel for trips. There's a whole range of questions.
Yes.
So if we get all those questions together and we ask the LLM all those questions very quickly at once, we then get back all the information. And then over time, we can track and see how the brand visibility is changing across those questions. Does that make sense?
Yes. And do you have any advice on how to increase that visibility?
Yeah, for sure. So it would be outreach, doing real outreach to the authors who wrote the content. And number 2, getting your content into the LLMs by targeting news sites that we know the LLMs focus on. And there are different ways to do that. One of the ways that we can see is what is the preference of ChatGPT when it comes to news sites. The way that we look at that is we look at the source documents, right? For all these 150 million questions, what sites do we see over and over and over again?
Yeah.
Because we know that they're obsessed with those sites. So let's create a new document on those sites because we know that they're going to be crawling that site. And that document will be about our brand. It'll be about Adidas running shoes. We'll put any message we want. And that message will change the LLM's information and knowledge and cause it to potentially give a different answer.
Okay. Yes. That's a good advice. And you're the founder of SearchAtlas. What data gaps in SEO industry drove you to the development of that tool?
Geez, yeah. I would have had a lot more hair had I not had to build all this 7 years ago. So our genesis was we were, so I love the fact that this podcast is called I Hate SEO because the reason that I built SearchAtlas Group was because I hated something about SEO, which is that my first tech company in the ticketing space, we were trying to get ranked in Google because people don't really realize this, but Google is the largest ticketing company in the world in a sense, because people go to Google to find their tickets and then they buy from StubHub or Ticketmaster or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And so to win in that space, I had to win on Google. And it wasn't such a good story. It didn't end up going the way I wanted it to. We were competing against juggernauts, and our entire funding round, $5.5 million, was lunch money for those guys. So it was really challenging. And I wanted to understand the search engine better. That was what drove me to begin doing the research, to study the link graph of the internet, all the backlinks, the backlink profile and the backlink structure of the internet, and how Google was using that to rank websites. So we could figure out influence. How can websites trade influence? How can we gain influence? What are the approaches to link building? Let's look at the raw data. So that was one of the first questions that started us on the journey. And along that journey, we did correlation studies, we did experiments, we learned a lot. And then we realized there's a ton of people that needed those insights. We began to build a system for doing authority building at scale. And a lot of brands, especially a lot of my friends that had startups, were coming to me for help with that. And that began our agency, LinkGraph. We were using every SEO software tool under the sun. So we were highly aware of where their strengths were, but where their weaknesses were.
Yeah.
And the things that we wanted to do with those platforms. Also the limitations. Because people in the industry, this is like a big problem. People in the industry believe the metrics from these SEO tool providers, like they're gospel.
Yes.
Oh, it's a DR 60.
Yes.
Oh, it's a DA 40. Oh, it's a site authority, whatever. A Majestic Trust Flow, 15. What we have to do is have a healthy skepticism about those metrics, because there are assumptions being made that get those metrics created. If you go to Fiverr, you'll find gigs galore for manipulating those metrics. They're very easy to manipulate, right?
Yeah.
And at this chapter of the internet, Google's ranking system, there are sites that are demoted because of their content, because of their backlink profile, because they're doing fake backlink building. There's all kinds of sites that have been demoted. When we plotted out all the domains on the internet and analyzed their authority scores and all those third-party SEO tools, what we saw shocked us. I couldn't believe how many dead sites these tools were saying have a authority score of 30, 40, 50. There's tons of them. And so when we realized that, we realized these guys actually they're not doing that good of a job.
Okay.
And as we were trying to do SEO with our agency's clients, we realized we needed to start building some of these tools ourselves.
Okay.
So that began the journey.
Mm-hmm. And how do you identify which SEO processes are ready for automation?
That is a really good question. So we don't begin by building software to automate. We begin doing it manually.
Okay.
Right? So we run an experiment and we say, what happens if we change X to Y, right? That is like a premise we have. It's just like science, like it's scientific method, right?
Yeah.
We ask a question and then we try to prove it or disprove it.
Mm-hmm.
If we can show that reliably at scale, statistically, that when we do it this way, we see positive influence in rankings and we can repeat it and repeat it again and again and again, then it's a candidate for automation. If we run it one or two times and we see it works, well, that's good, but we have to do more testing.
Okay.
So it begins with the testing. And then once we feel like we have something in testing, then we begin to automate it.
Okay.
That's the process.
Sure. And are there any SEO technical metrics, technical SEO metrics that should tools track but currently don't?
Technical SEO metrics that we don't track?
No.
Or that we track?
In general, are there any technical SEO metrics that none of the tools track, but they should?
That they should.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So one of the ones so this is, I think, to me, the second most powerful ranking factor in Google. The first is PQ, it's the page quality score. The second one is topical dominance, also known as topical authority. And everyone knows that we need more of it. Everyone wants to build more of it. So people are creating content and publishing more, but they don't actually know how much they have versus their competitors.
Okay.
Right? And then they also don't know, where is the competitor getting their topical authority from? Right? Where are they getting it that we don't have it? And so this was a huge, huge problem. It is currently a problem for us in the industry because we know that Google's using this ranking system, but we can't recreate it. So that's something that we had to figure out. How do we do it? So about 3 months ago, we started to run those experiments and start to do the research. We dove deeply into Google patent literature. We consulted with some of our friends in the community to get their insights as well. And we devised the system, which basically allows us to look at websites' topical search volume, let's say, right? Their search volume for certain topics and how visible they are for those topics. And using those scores, we can actually grade sites and say, you know what, you're a 30 out of 100 for running shoes, and your competitor is a 50 out of 100 for running shoes. The topical gap are these keywords that your competitor is ranking for with these landing pages. If we can rank for these keywords using landing pages that are similar to our competitors, we can steal their topical authority and siphon it over to our site. That's called kind of a topical gap analysis. And that's the way we can steal topical authority, bring it to our site. So that, I think, is a huge gap for the industry. And I think now I'm excited. I'm proud of our team. I think we've solved it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you will be first in the industry to offer that metric.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So how do you validate the accuracy of your tool's metrics, actually?
Yeah. So this is a good question. That metric in particular, we were really interested in seeing how well it correlated with our rankings that we're observing in search results. It began with a lot of times a question, which is, why the heck is this guy ranking ahead of me? Right? We looked in certain search results, like, why is that guy? Their authority score is way lower than ours. our content we think is better than theirs. We've already optimized it. What kind of black hat SEO magic are they doing? Right? What is it that they're doing? Or they must be doing some crazy click manipulation or something. And then we realize actually it's a lot simpler than that. It has to do with topical dominance.
Okay.
And so to prove whether that was the cause or the reason behind why they were ranking, we actually tested the algorithm to see if that site actually had really high topical dominance. The site was a site called linkbuilder.io. You can look at it yourself. Anyone who's listening to this can check it out. And you'll see they rank very highly for a lot of very competitive link building related keywords, but their authority scores are actually quite low relative to the competitors in search. And so we figured out that this metric was the reason that they were able to outrank.
Topical authority.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And this is just one example.
Yes.
But this is happening across all keywords on Google. And so when we then took this score and tried to see what happens if we like what can we learn about the correlation of rankings based on the topical dominance score that these sites have, we found that topical dominance is one of the most powerful correlation factors, ranking factors that govern the dynamics of how Google is ranking documents for keywords. And so now it's become one of our most important metrics. And I think it's kind of the doom of keyword difficulty. Keyword difficulty is, I think, pretty much dead.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, I know, a big statement because a lot of people are obsessed with keyword difficulty.
Everybody's talking about it. That's how they make decision. They base decision on keyword difficulty. Especially, I myself worked as a one or two marketing team members, for small companies. That's often the case. And that's the first thing you check. What's your keyword difficulty? How much of a chance you actually have to rank. So that's amazing that you're saying that this is a dead metric.
It's a dead metric. So check this out. I know a lot of people listening to this are probably still using that metric.
Yes.
And I'm going to try to explain. You asked me a question earlier about authority.
Yes.
You said, how does Google think about authority? And I said, there's two lenses. One is this link-based lens.
Yes.
The other one is a content-based lens,
yes.
right? Keyword difficulty only looks at the backlink-based lens.
Yes.
Huge problem.
True.
Huge blind spot. And actually between these two, we're seeing that the topical dominance is way more powerful than the backlink factors at play. It's the reason why these small guys can outrank juggernauts. You can build sites in the health niche and outrank Healthline, even though Healthline is a massive site, very powerful, because you have more of this topical dominance. So as soon as you realize that, you realize this whole notion of keyword difficulty is fatally flawed. It's just fucked. Like, we can't really use it because it's relying on this idea that the backlink authorities of the landing pages are the reason they're ranking in a certain way. So that's one piece of it. The other thing is we're stepping into a new chapter of content in the internet with AI. We're moving toward zero cost of information. To build a landing page costs a tenth of a penny. To build a blog post, a couple pennies, really. It's not a lot. It's more if you do it well, okay, like, albeit, but like if you're AI generating content, synthetic information is essentially really, really cheap. And so when we're thinking about our content strategy, right, and the content we're going to create, we don't really need to worry about the difficulty of those keywords anymore because we can create content for all of them. And we should, especially to boost our topical dominance scores.
Yeah.
In fact, if we don't do that, if we don't cover all the topics, whether they would have had a high keyword difficulty, a medium, or a low, we're losing out on an opportunity to create that topical dominance.
Yes. So in the context of what you're saying, I'm thinking, what is the future of backlinks? How are they useful? Are they useful?
So I love this question because I think that right now backlinks are taking a kind of a second seat to content. I asked yesterday the audience. I asked them who's interested in building backlinks faster, more powerful than before. Maybe about 15% of people raised their hands.
Mm-hmm.
The industry has fallen out of favor with backlinks. Then I asked, what about creating the best possible content, strongest content? About 60% of the room raised their hand because we're realizing content's very powerful. And then I asked about automating on-page optimization, and 80% of the room raised their hand, which is great. The thing about content is, over time, and this isn't true, I shouldn't say that this is happening right now, but in time, as these LLMs become more advanced, right? 1 year out, 2 years out, we're going to see greater sophistication, costs come down as tools like our technology platform, as Scholar, as SearchAtlas, our Content Genius AI content creator, as these tools become more powerful and more expressive, allowing us to create better content, more information, less words, more factuality, more insight, more engagement. We're going to be able to express that at scale, and not just one business, many businesses. All SEOs will be able to do that. This is more of what I call the end game of the SEO industry, is that content, that masterful, amazing content will become more ubiquitous. Obviously, some people will have advantages over others based on certain first-party data or other insights they have. But in that end game scenario, Google is going to rely more on the factors that make a brand. And that is going to be a lot to do with offsite signals, like the backlinks and like the click data they're getting through Chrome, the traffic data, which is harder to spoof.
Yes, absolutely. So are there any SEO processes that still require significant amount of manual work?
Yes, for sure. So I think when we think about SEO, I think about SEO in these 4 pillars of authority. We call this holistic SEO. Authority, content, technicals, UX, and behavior. Those are the 4 pillars. And technicals, that's been automated in auto already. That was, we did that. Content is highly automated. Authority, building authority at scale, is becoming more efficient and more automated. But the UX signals, the traffic signals, right? How do we get those traffic signals to the site? Well, we have to either, 1, improve our landing pages, make them more responsive, more beautiful, more conversion optimized, more sticky, more value additive to the user. And that's a design task and a web development task. It's very manual, right? AI is helping us, but still manual work to be done there. Then it's even our newsletter is SEO, right? Getting people who click through our emails to our website boosts the traffic of the site, boosts what Google calls historical data, just the traffic patterns of people using and engaging with our site and living there and being there. That's all a positive signal. So SEO is actually all these other things of digital marketing too. And some of those really, they still require human oversight, human strategist, human creativity to guide them. But, you know, we are seeing AI and other platforms automate a lot of pieces there, but there's still kind of the conductor, like the orchestrator that's orchestrating all of them.
Yes.
And the industry, we're not at a point yet where there's just like a push button. I hit one button and everything happens.
Yes.
But we're seeing it happen slowly. Like we're moving in that direction.
Yes. So we're becoming orchestrators of a bunch of specialists.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. So we have time for one last question. And I wanted to ask you about like the most important trends in SEO. Where are we heading? In what direction in 2025?
Yeah, I think the LLM visibility problem is a really important one. And taking a wider aperture lens around search is a really important theme. We're still, as an industry, really focused on Google and how Google's ranking us and Google Search Console and Google's crawlers and Google's ranking systems. And we do have to step back. And we talked about the LLM visibility problem today.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be a really key area for us as an industry to focus on, not just because, you know, I think that Search GPT is going to flip Google, but there's so many benefits that we get to being visible in LLMs. when someone creates a listicle content of what are the best, whatever, running shoes, restaurants, ski gloves or whatever for the industry, you want to make sure you're in those lists. If you're not in those lists, you're going to get fewer backlinks, right? You're going to be written about less on the internet. And so getting in there right now and starting to think about how do we get our businesses, our brands, our story told in the LLM is a key theme for 2025, super key. And the other one, if I can tackle one more, is going to be to understand more about the user behavior signals that Google's paying attention to. The helpful content update is a really interesting update because it shows us that they're paying attention to certain site-wide signals about branded search volume, and they're starting to pay more attention to that traffic data they have and using that to change how sites rank. So understanding more about what patterns they're looking for in the user behavior data is, I think it's going to be interesting. Obviously, some SEOs will try to manipulate that and game that.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting because it'll tell us kind of how they're thinking about that and what we can do about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic conversation. And if you want to know more, please follow Manick on his LinkedIn profile and subscribe to I Hate SEO newsletter and follow our YouTube channel. Thank you. Thank you, Manick.
Thank you. This is fun.